My parents locked me and my disabled child outside on Christmas morning saying, "Celebrations are for actual family." So I smiled, drove home, and revoked their access to the $3 million trust fund I controlled that they'd been spending from. Hey family, your support keeps these stories alive. Subscribe, say hi in the comments, and tell us your city or country. Let's get into today's story. The snow was falling harder now, each flake stinging my face like tiny needles of betrayal. My daughter Julie shivered in her wheelchair beside me, her little hands clutching the blanket I'd wrapped around her shoulders. She looked up at me with those trusting brown eyes, not understanding why Grandma's door wouldn't open. Why we were standing in the cold on Christmas morning. I knocked again, harder this time. "Mom, Dad, it's freezing out here." Through the frosted window, I could see the golden glow of the Christmas tree, hear the muffled laughter of my siblings inside. My sister Denise's high-pitched cackle. My brother Clifton's booming voice. The clink of champagne glasses celebrating a holiday that apparently didn't include us anymore. "Mommy, I'm cold," Julie whispered, her lips turning purple. She was only 7, born with cerebral palsy, and the cold affected her worse than most. Her muscles were already starting to tense up, and I knew we didn't have much time before this became dangerous. The door finally cracked open. Just an inch. My mother's face appeared, her expression colder than the December wind whipping around us. "You need to leave," she said flatly. "What?" "Mom, it's Christmas. You invited us. We drove 3 hours to get here." That was before. Her eyes were hard, unrecognizable. This wasn't the woman who'd sung me lullabies, who'd promised to always protect me. Before what? "Celebrations are for actual family, Emma. Not." She glanced down at Julie with disgust I'll never forget. Burdens we never asked for. I should have seen it coming. Looking back now, the signs were always there, painted in the subtle cruelties my family excelled at. But you don't want to believe the people who raised you could be monsters. You make excuses. You rationalize. You hope. 3 months earlier, everything had seemed almost normal. I'd been managing my late grandmother's trust fund. $3 million she'd left behind with explicit instructions that I serve as trustee. Grandma Helen had been the only one who truly loved me unconditionally, who saw me as more than just the daughter who ruined her life by having Julie. "Your grandmother was always too soft on you," my father had said during that last dinner, his voice dripping with contempt. He'd been drinking more lately, his face permanently flushed with anger and alcohol. "Leaving you in charge of that money? She must have been senile." "Dad, Grandma Helen was sharp until the day she died. She knew exactly what she was doing." My mother had laughed, that brittle sound that used to make me flinch as a child. "Did she? Or did you manipulate a sick old woman?" Denise had smirked from across the table, twirling her wine glass. "Must be nice, having access to millions while the rest of us actually work for a living." Clifton had just grunted, shoveling food into his mouth. He'd been between jobs for 2 years, living off the monthly allowances I'd been approving from the trust. They all had been. My parents, my siblings, even my cousin Troy, who'd shown up with his hand out within weeks of Grandma's funeral. The trust had specific terms. Grandma Helen had been clear. The money was for family support and Emma's discretion. I'd interpreted that generously. Too generously. Every month I'd approved thousands in distributions. My parents' mortgage. Denise's credit card bills. Clifton's car payments. Troy's business ventures that never materialized. I told myself I was being a good daughter, a good sister. That this was what family did. But the requests had gotten bigger, more demanding. Last month, my mother had called about a vacation home. "It's only $400,000, she'd said, as if that was pocket change. "Your father and I deserve something nice. We raised you, didn't we? Made sacrifices. Mom, the trust isn't unlimited. And that's not what Grandma intended. Your grandmother is dead, Emma. She doesn't get to control us from the grave. Now are you approving this or not?" I'd hesitated, and that hesitation had cost me everything. The calls had started coming daily. My father calling me ungrateful. Denise saying I'd gotten too big for my britches. Clifton had actually shown up at my apartment one night, drunk, demanding I stop playing games with family money. But it wasn't their money. It was Grandma's. And she'd left it to me because she knew exactly who they were. She'd warned me the night before she died, gripping my hand with surprising strength. They'll come for it, baby. All of them. But you remember, you don't owe them nothing. Nothing. You take care of that sweet baby girl and you protect yourself. The Christmas invitation had arrived in my mailbox 2 weeks before the holiday. A beautiful card handmade with glitter and care. My mother's handwriting in elegant script. Family Christmas at our home. Please join us. We've missed you and Julie so much. I'd cried when I read it. Maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe the tension had been my fault. Maybe they really did want us there, wanted to be a family again. Julie had been so excited. Are we really going to Grandma's house, Mommy? Will there be presents? Yes, baby. We'll have Christmas with everyone. I'd spent $300 on gifts. Thoughtful presents for everyone, wrapped carefully while Julie watched Christmas movies. I'd made Grandma Helen's famous sweet potato pie, the recipe only I knew because she'd whispered it to me in the hospital. I'd bought Julie a new dress, red velvet with white trim, so she'd look beautiful for the family photos. The drive had been difficult. Julie's wheelchair had to be folded and unfolded multiple times for rest stops. She'd gotten carsick once and we'd had to pull over while she cried and I held her, rubbing her back, promising that everything would be wonderful. That family was waiting for us. We'd arrived at 9 in the morning, right when the invitation specified. The house was decorated beautifully, lights twinkling, a wreath on the door that I recognized as expensive. Another purchase made with trust fund money, no doubt. Mom, please, I said through the crack in the door. Whatever's wrong, we can talk about it inside. Julie needs to get warm. I said leave. Her voice was ice. You're not welcome here. Behind her, I could hear Denise laughing. Is she still out there? Oh my God, she's pathetic. My father's voice boomed. Tell her she's cut off until she learns some respect. And then I understood. This wasn't about Christmas. This was punishment. I'd denied the vacation home request, had started asking questions about the other distributions, had suggested we needed to be more careful with Grandma's legacy. So they'd decided to teach me a lesson. They'd invited us here on Christmas morning, knowing Julie would be excited and hopeful, knowing we'd drive for hours through snow, just so they could slam the door in our faces. Just so they could show me they held the power. That family meant nothing if I didn't do what they wanted. Let me be very clear, Emma, my mother said, her breath fogging in the cold air between us. You approve that vacation home by New Year's. You stop questioning every little expense and you remember your place in this family. Otherwise, you and that child are on your own. No more holidays. No more birthdays. No more family. Choose wisely. The door slammed. The lock clicked with finality. Julie looked up at me, tears freezing on her cheeks. Mommy? I don't understand. Did we do something bad? Something broke inside me in that moment. Or maybe something finally healed. I looked down at my daughter. My beautiful, brave daughter who'd survived 3 surgeries, countless therapy sessions, who faced every day with more courage than my entire family combined. And I smiled. No, baby, I said, wiping her tears with my gloves. We didn't do anything bad. But Mommy just figured something out. I loaded Julie back into the car, cranking the heat as high as it would go. I strapped her wheelchair in carefully, then grabbed my phone. My hands weren't shaking. I felt calm for the first time in months. Here's maybe. I pulled up the trust management app. With a few taps, I could see everything, every distribution I'd approved over the past 3 years since Grandma died. $42,000 to my parents. $28,000 to Denise. $35,000 to Clifton. $15,000 to Troy. And those were just the recent ones. Over 3 years, I'd approved nearly $400,000 in distributions. To people who just locked me and my disabled daughter outside in the snow. On Christmas. To teach me a lesson about obedience. I opened my email and began typing. First to the trust attorney. Then to the financial management company. By the time I finished, my fingers were flying across the screen. Each email was professional, clear, and legally airtight. What are you doing, Mommy? Julie asked from the back seat, warming her hands on the heater vents. Taking care of us, baby. The way Grandma Helen wanted. The drive home was quiet, peaceful even. Julie fell asleep within 20 minutes, exhausted from the cold and confusion. I drove carefully through the snow, my mind clearer than it had been in years. My phone started ringing around noon. My mother first, then Denise, then Clifton, then my father. I let every call go to voicemail. I could imagine them inside, finally checking their accounts, seeing the notifications. All automatic distributions. Cancelled. All pending requests. Denied. All future access. Revoked. The voicemails started coming in rapid succession. Emma, there must be some kind of error. Mom. You bitch, how dare you, Denise. This is theft. I'll sue you. Clifton. Call me back right now, young lady, or you'll regret this, Dad. I deleted them without listening all the way through. Let them rage. Let them panic. Let them feel a fraction of the powerlessness they tried to force on me. When we got home to our small apartment, I carried Julie inside, got her into warm pajamas, and made us hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. We curled up on the couch together, watching The Polar Express, her favorite Christmas movie. Mommy, she asked during a quiet moment, are we still going to have Christmas? Baby, we're going to have the best Christmas ever. Just you and me. I meant it. Tomorrow I'd take her shopping and let her pick out anything she wanted. We'd make cookies. We'd sing carols. We'd celebrate what really mattered. Not toxic people, not money, not obligations. Just love. The calls didn't stop. Over the next 3 days, I received 67 calls and 43 text messages. They ranged from tearful apologies to vicious threats. My mother left a voicemail crying about how I was destroying the family. Denise texted that I was a vindictive bitch who'd never been good enough. Clifton showed up at my apartment building drunk at 2 in the morning until the security guard threatened to call the police. But it was my father's message that revealed the true depth of their desperation. You don't understand what you've done. We have debts. Real debts. That money isn't a luxury for us. We need it. You're going to ruin us. And there was the truth I'd been too blind to see. They hadn't been living comfortably off occasional help from the trust. They'd been living beyond their means, counting on unlimited access to Grandma's money. The vacation home wasn't a want. It was leverage, something they could borrow against. They'd built a house of cards and I'd been the foundation they stood on. On December 28th, the trust attorney, Mr. Davidson, called me personally. He was a dignified man in his 60s who'd known Grandma Helen for decades. Ms. Johnson, I want you to know that your actions were entirely within your legal rights as trustee. But I also want to make sure you understand the situation fully. What do you mean? Your family has made some concerning financial decisions over the past few years. I suspect they believed the trust would always be there to bail them out. Mr. Davidson sent me a comprehensive report. I read it that night after putting Julie to bed, each page worse than the last. My parents had refinanced their house 3 times, pulling out equity each time. They currently owed more than it was worth. They had 17 credit cards all maxed out. Combined debt, $247,000. Denise had started a boutique that failed within 6 months, leaving her $90,000 in debt. She'd counted on the trust to fund a second attempt. Clifton hadn't worked in 2 years, not because he couldn't find a job, but because he'd decided he was above normal work. He'd been living entirely off trust distributions, spending $7,000 a month on rent, cars, and clubbing. Troy had used his trust money to invest in cryptocurrency and lost everything. He'd been trying to borrow more to make it back. They weren't just entitled. They were financially destroyed and had been using Grandma's legacy as their personal ATM to maintain an illusion of success. The report included email chains I'd never seen. My parents discussing how to manage me. Denise suggesting they put pressure on her through the kid. Clifton proposing they freeze her out until she's desperate enough to just hand over trustee duties. The Christmas lockout hadn't been spontaneous cruelty. It had been planned. Calculated. They'd invited us specifically to humiliate us, to show me what I'd lose if I didn't comply. They'd weaponized my daughter's disability and my desire for family connection. New Year's Eve brought an unexpected visitor. My cousin Jasmine, who I hadn't seen in 5 years, showed up at my door with tears in her eyes. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. I hesitated, but something in her face made me open the door. Jasmine was my father's niece, raised in a different city. We'd been close as kids, but family drama had pulled us apart. She sat on my couch, twisting her hands. "I heard what happened. What they did to you and Julie on Christmas. How did you?" Denise was bragging about it. Posted it in the family group chat. Said they taught you a lesson about respect. Jasmine's voice cracked. "Emma, I'm so sorry. I should have reached out years ago. I should have. I knew they were like this." "Like what?" "My dad cut them off 10 years ago and they made our lives hell. Spread rumors that he'd stolen from them. Turned other family members against us. We moved away just to escape it." She looked at me with understanding I hadn't seen in anyone else. "But you can't move away from your parents, from your siblings. You've been trapped, haven't you?" I started crying then, really crying for the first time since Christmas. Someone finally understood. Someone finally saw what I'd been living through. Jasmine stayed until midnight. We talked about everything. About Grandma Helen, about the patterns of abuse, about how families can be the most dangerous kind of prison. On January 7th, my parents sued me. They filed a lawsuit claiming I'd exceeded my authority as trustee, and demanding I be removed and replaced with an unbiased third party, which their filing suggested should be my father. Mr. Davidson wasn't worried. "They have no case. Helen's trust document is ironclad. She specifically gave you full discretionary authority. But we'll need to document everything, show that your decisions were prudent and in line with the trust's purpose." The next 3 months were hell. Depositions. Documentation. Character assassination. My family hired a lawyer who painted me as a manipulative gold digger who'd isolated a dying woman to steal her money. They brought up every mistake I'd ever made. Dropping out of college when I got pregnant with Julie, the years I'd struggled as a single mother, the times I'd asked them for help. But the evidence was on my side. I had records of every distribution, every request, every email where they demanded money. I had Grandma Helen's letters, including one she'd written 2 weeks before she died, specifically about her fears that certain family members only see dollar signs. The judge was a black woman in her 50s named Judge Mitchell. During the hearing, she read through the documentation with a stern expression that terrified me. Finally, she looked up. "I've seen many cases like this," she said. "Families fighting over money, relationships destroyed by greed. But rarely do I see such clear evidence of financial exploitation being disguised as family support." Judge Mitchell ruled in my favor on every count. Not only did she dismiss my family's lawsuit, but she added protections to the trust that prevented them from filing again. She also ordered them to pay my legal fees, $38,000. "Ms. Johnson has executed her duties as trustee with prudence and care," Judge Mitchell said in her written ruling. "The evidence shows a pattern of financial manipulation and emotional abuse by the plaintiffs. This court finds that Ms. Johnson's decision to revoke distributions was not only within her legal rights but was a necessary act of self-preservation and protection of trust assets." My mother screamed in the courtroom. She screamed. Security had to escort her out while she yelled that I'd destroyed the family, that I was dead to her, that Grandma Helen would be ashamed. My father just stared at me with cold hatred. Denise cried, but I suspected it was only because she'd have to actually pay her bills now. Clifton didn't even show up to hear the verdict. Outside the courthouse, Mr. Davidson pulled me aside. "There's something else you should know. The trust has a provision. When you turn 40 or when Julie turns 18, whichever comes first, you can dissolve the trust and take full ownership of the remaining assets." "What?" "Your grandmother wanted to make sure you were protected but not trapped. In 6 years, when Julie turns 18, you'll have complete financial freedom. Until then, I'd recommend you focus on building a life separate from these people." I looked back at the courthouse, where I could still hear my mother's muffled shouting. Then I thought about Julie waiting at home with Jasmine who'd volunteered to babysit. My real family. 2 years later, on a cold December morning, I got the call I'd been half expecting, half dreading. My father had died. Heart attack. Quick and brutal, like he'd lived. I didn't cry. I felt empty. Not sad, not relieved, just hollow. Jasmine came over immediately, held me while I stared at nothing, processing what I felt about losing someone who'd stopped being my father years before he died. The funeral was small. I took Julie, now 9 and stronger than ever after 2 more surgeries. We sat in the back row, observers to a grief I couldn't quite share. My mother didn't acknowledge us. Denise glared. Clifton was too drunk to notice. After the burial, my mother approached me. She looked older than her 63 years, worn down by stress and bitterness. "Are you happy now?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Your father died stressed and heartbroken. Died without his money, his dignity. Because of you." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. "No, Mom. I'm not happy. I'm sad that my father spent his last years angry about money instead of trying to know his granddaughter. I'm sad that you both chose your greed over your own child. I'm sad that you'll never understand what you lost. What we lost. You took everything from us." "No. I took back what was never yours to begin with. What you lost was me. Was Julie. Was the chance to be real family." I picked up Julie from her wheelchair, held her close. "But we're okay now. We're actually happy. I hope someday you find peace with your choices, but that's not my responsibility anymore." I walked away from that cemetery and never looked back. My mother called twice over the next year. Once when she was evicted from her house, once when Denise had a nervous breakdown. Both times she asked for money. Both times I said no and blocked the number. Julie asks about them sometimes. I tell her the truth in age-appropriate ways. That some people aren't capable of real love, that family is about more than blood, that we're better off surrounded by people who choose us every day. The trust fund still exists, managed carefully. I've used it to pay for Julie's medical care, for a modest house with a ramp and adaptive equipment, for a college fund that will give her every opportunity. The rest grows, waiting for the day she's 18 and we can decide together what to do with Grandma Helen's legacy. On Christmas mornings, Julie and I have our own traditions now. We make Grandma's sweet potato pie. We volunteer at a shelter for families experiencing homelessness. We invite Jasmine and her kids and we celebrate what family actually means. Not obligation, not manipulation, but choice and love and showing up for each other, especially in the cold. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that moment on my parents' porch. How I stood there in the snow with my daughter shivering beside me, and I felt my heart break and remake itself into something stronger. How I smiled because I finally understood that I'd been free all along. I just had to choose it. The empty chairs at our table don't feel empty anymore. They feel right. They feel like the cost of peace, of safety, of building a life where my daughter learns she's worth more than any amount of money, where love isn't transactional, where family is something you create, not something you endure. I locked away the hurt and found the key to living freely. And if that makes me the villain in their story, I can live with that. Because in ours, mine and Julie's, I'm the hero who finally chose us. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. Remember, you don't owe toxic people your peace just because you share DNA. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. And if you're struggling with similar family dynamics, please reach out to a therapist or counselor. You deserve support and you're not alone. The trust fund remains under my management. Julie is thriving. And my family never speaks to me again, which turns out to be the greatest gift they ever gave me.